This is Van Dance. You're listening to the Proffitt Report podcast with Doug Proffitt.
Bernheim, the name of one of Louisville's most cherished getaways. It sits just 20 minutes south of the Gene Snyder Freeway. It's a walking, hiking, picture-taking paradise. Bernheim Forest was given to the public by Isaac Bernheim in 1929. He was a German immigrant who had made it rich off bourbon in Louisville, and he insisted on giving back to the public. And boy, what a gift. I first went there on elementary school field trips and have never forgotten it. My wife's been going to Bernheim since she was a very young child, always celebrating her mother's birthday in March at Bernheim, sometimes in the snow. Chances are you have a fond memory of the place. Bernheim really came alive, though, 2 years ago when a black bear was spotted by a visitor who snapped photos of it. At the time, it was the closest black bear sighting to Louisville in more than 100 years. So exciting. Now, with more black bears appearing across Kentuckiana on a random basis, even one getting hit and injured by a car in southern Indiana, I had to ask Mark Wourms of Bernheim to fill us in on these amazing, mysterious creatures. And what better way to begin this edition of my Proffitt Report podcast than with Wourms quoting the all-time great environmentalist.
John Muir once said, "Going into the woods is going home. I suppose we came from the woods originally, but in some of nature's forests, the adventurous traveler seems a feeble, unwelcome creature. Wild beasts and the weather trying to kill him. The rank and tangled vegetation armed with spears and stinging nettles, barring his way and making life a hard struggle."
Woohoo! Well done, Mark Wourms from Bernheim Forest. Thank you. What a great way to open this edition of the Proffitt Report podcast. And you've made your way up from Bernheim, where you've been the director a long time now.
10 years now, Doug.
And the most exciting time, I think, because you got to track the return of black bears to Kentuckiana. In 2016 is when the stir really began.
Yes, 2016, we had what we believe was a young male come and visit Bernheim. And the exciting part was he was with us for several months, making his way through our great and wonderful big forest.
And you had a naming contest.
We did. We invited our members and the general public to provide names for this black bear, and it ended up that they voted for Bernie. And this was fun because historically, Isaac Wolf Bernheim had a brother, Bernard, and so this was Bernie the Bear in honor of the history of Bernheim.
So we call you the bear expert in town because really you all did you had the first sighting, which just really lit Kentuckiana afire with excitement. The bears had been absent from our area for 100 years, as we learned from you. And Now let's talk about the Southern Indiana incident. We're sitting here talking the Monday before Thanksgiving. We all woke up this morning to find out that a motorist had hit what the Indiana DNR is now confirming to be a small black bear on I-64 and the I-265 exchange there. What went through your mind when you heard this? I think, if I'm correct, this is really the first human contact interaction anyone's had with the black bear since they came back in 2016.
Yes, indeed. It's very, very rare for a bear to be hit by a car. And my first emotion was, I hope it wasn't hurt or badly injured. And that's yet to be determined. Right now, it looks like he's still alive and out there and hopefully healing. But bears are intelligent creatures and very, very secretive. So the fact that he made it all the way up there, probably from the Appalachian foothills through the knobs of Kentucky, probably crossing the Ohio somewhere around Fort Knox. And my guess is because of the land and the way it's been developed, he probably ran up that north side or west side of the Ohio River up to where he was struck.
Because he's small, I guess we can rule out the fact that he's the original Southern Indiana bear from 2016, which also swam across the Ohio River to Corydon.
Right. And you know, bears are magnificent swimmers. Black bears are. And so, you know, the fact that they can do that with ease shows that if we provide the corridors, they'll take advantage of them.
And the corridor, being the Ohio River, they like being near it because of food supply.
Food supply, water supply, a little less development, a little less autos, yes.
If this bear bear were struck by a car and it's not been fatal, do you think this bear can survive?
Well, that's, up to however it was injured. They're tough creatures. Bears fall out of trees. Black bears are good climbers. And when chased by dogs, or for that matter, by people who are trying to do studies on them, they'll climb 40, 50 feet up into a tree sometimes. And there have been many cases where bears have fallen out of trees, hit the ground, and got up, shook their heads, and ran off. And so they're pretty tough creatures.
Tell me about this. Let's talk about what that bear did for Bernheim and what it did about our recognition around here of how our wildlife is changing. Metro Louisville really was a stir because of this. What did the sighting do for you all?
Well, any dramatic sighting of a big, beautiful creature like a black bear gets people excited. They want to be able to see it themselves. We're so disconnected with nature, and Bernheim is there to connect people with nature. And so this was nature's own calling card saying, come visit, come see me if you can. I challenge you to come walk our trails. And so our attendance jumped through the roof. And, I had people calling us saying, if I walk Rock Run Trail, am I likely to see the bear? And we'd say, well, you're as likely there as anywhere. So people were very excited. And one of the other things it did, Doug, was it got the whole metro area talking about the importance of nature and conservation, staying in pace with development and saving these important wildlife corridors up and down streams, knob tops, patches of woods along streams, so that bear and other creatures such as bobcat and even golden eagles could take advantage and live in this area in harmony with people, not opposed to them.
As in 2016, you had some great theories, good ones, of where you thought that male bear came from. Let's take people through the possible route to Bernheim Forest. Where did you think that bear started?
Well, the most likely is that he was a young male and he was getting pushed around and getting scared because it was running into breeding season. And during breeding season in the midsummer, older bears will literally chase and even kill a young black bear in their territory because they don't want the competition. And so that was probably down in the Appalachian foothills in eastern Kentucky. And so from there, this bear probably used a string of creeks and knobs, those small mountains, big hills, whatever we call them in Kentucky, those knobs that forms almost like a mustache across our state. And sitting right at the peak of that mustache is Bernheim. And so it probably followed a series of creeks and knobs right up to Bernheim, and from Bernheim across the Ohio River, up into Indiana. And what was fun is also later that summer, there were 2 other black bear observations, which we're pretty sure were also other bears.
And your trail cameras captured Bernie the bear, but since then, here we are in November 2018, have you had any sightings of that bear? Do you think he left Bernheim?
We think he left Bernheim. We think he probably made his way after a long season of looking for a female of his own. After breeding season, he probably took a retreat visit right back the same route all the way back into eastern Kentucky into the foothills. And there he's probably put on lots of pounds, and let's hope he's survived. And now he might have a breeding territory of his own.
What do you think, 300-mile trek?
I think it might even be longer than that. Yes.
And while these bears have been spotted, again, you're right. We had Bernie the bear, then we had the southern Indiana bear go from Corydon over to north of Madison. Correct. And then we've had other spottings down in Glendale, Kentucky. Up to this point, what kind of interactions have humans reported? There's not really been an incident.
Well, just the other day, there was a report of a black bear on a highway interchange down near Elizabethtown. Now, that wasn't exactly confirmed, but people, thought they saw him. And so it may be that this was that same bear, and he's now, in just a matter of a week or so, made his way all the way up into southern Indiana. So, they're likely to move. But again, they're secretive. We also have bobcats all over this area, and they're living in the city with us in some cases. And yet, you don't see people reporting bobcats.
I'm fascinated as to why it took so long. Why was it to 2016 we had not seen a bear so close to Metro Louisville? That's where where the headlines became is that when that bear entered Bernheim Forest and then also northern Nelson County, that was the closest to Metro Louisville it had been.
Well, my guess is there's probably a couple things going on, and I hope it's the latter rather than the first. And that is, the first would be that there's some kind of disruption in the home range of these bears, and they're getting pushed out of their primary habitat, out of eastern Kentucky, out of their primary habitat. Now, there might be some of that, but probably my guess is that it's just the right time. The bear population in Kentucky is growing. The black bears number 1,000 plus individuals now. And so that prime habitat is starting, it needs to expand in order to accommodate that many more bears that are coming online every year. And probably the other thing that has happened is there are in ways more trees in Kentucky than there have historically been in many, many decades. And so there's ways for bears to hop from one patch to the next. And in that case, then, if you look at the streams and you look at those knob tops, you can find those migratory routes, which we call wildlife corridors.
And the reason why it brings a lot of excitement around here is we're not used to seeing these animals on a daily basis. If you just drive down, though, to Gatlinburg or Knoxville, or even, I remember one time we were eating lunch in downtown Asheville, North Carolina, and a bear got into a dumpster and everybody was going, it was like a squirrel. But in Louisville, I mean, we really don't know how to operate around the bears. And the Indiana DNR in this recent incident is now telling people in that area to bring in any pet food or whatever, because they're trying to find this bear if it's injured.
Right. And, you know, we're just not used to living with these kinds of creatures. People where they have prime habitat, where the populations are large, know that you don't feed them, you don't interact with them, you don't put your pet food out there on the porch every night and leave it till the morning, and you make sure that your garbage is covered and locked in place. And in fact, the parks in those areas all have bear-resistant garbage cans.
Some of the human tracking of these bears, the sightings, has been the great thing about social media in the world we live in is everything's caught on camera. I remember the 2016 Corridon bear. Yeah. A homeowner flew a drone and followed that bear through backyards, hopping through yards and all that kind of stuff. Then somebody in a deer stand caught that bear when it went to Madison, Indiana on video, trying to climb up the tree.
Right. And the first bear at Bernheim that was spotted by one of our general hikers or walkers in the morning. They were taking their favorite trail, walked right across the bridge, right in the Arboretum, and there, to their surprise, whipped out their cell phone and got a picture of Bernie.
A lot of those spottings, though, were in June. I remember spring. Should we be seeing them now in November?
Well, this is probably a young male that's been wandering around for the last several months. Now, he might be on his way back towards the Appalachian foothills, for that matter. But, you know, at some point there's going to be some bears that decide to overwinter in some of these large forest blocks and or in some small caves in the foothills and in the knobs. And so that's going to happen. It's just a matter of time.
For your work and what you do with Bernheim, what a development to have. I mean, because, you know, your trail cameras catch a lot of interesting wildlife.
Yes, they do.
But the bear was a new addition. I mean, what kind of message do you think it sends to our future and these animals in our region?
Well, if we read it properly and we learn from it, the real message I would love to have people take home is we can live with wildlife. We can have the lifestyles we need and we want. We can have jobs and everything we need. If we do it wisely, we can live with wildlife as well. And, you know, nature is regenerative, it's restorative, it is great for the human spirit and human creativity. And what we need to realize is when we're enriched by wildlife, we and wild places, we're going to have a better life and a better society as well.
It never ceases for me, and now I've been covering them more often since 2016, to still go, wow, when I see this news. I'm fascinated by it. Why is that? What is it about the black bear that has captured our fascination here in the Louisville area?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. There aren't very many creatures around here that are as large as we are. You know, a big black bear can weigh 300 pounds, and they're really be quick and agile like the best athletes. They can climb better than any athlete. I mean, they're incredible creatures. There's no question about it. The other one, Doug, is, you know what? We like being scared. We as humans respond to adrenaline. And a black bear, even though they're pretty mild and timid and shy creatures and are more likely to run away from you than at you, they're still a potential threat. They could kill you. And you know, we don't get that feeling very often in our lives when we're behind our desks and doing the things we do. And so that adrenaline rush is a real creature comfort from way back when we were out there hunting, fishing, gathering, and being hunted. So
what's your best advice? Should we be frightened of these bears? And the old adage is, make noise and they'll go away. Is that really going to happen that way?
Yeah, black bears typically, there's very few human interactions, attacks by black bears. Generally, that's occurred when people have scared them or surprised them, walking around a rock or a building, or getting between them and some cubs, which is never a good idea. Black bears are pretty timid animals, so if you ever confront one, keep your distance. If it starts coming to you, stand up, wave your arms, yell. If it gets closer, throw some sticks or rocks, pick up a big stick, and keep yelling and stomping your feet, and it's likely to turn and run. And if it doesn't, fight it. Often one big whack with a stick takes care of a black bear and it turns and runs. But we should not be afraid of these animals. We should be making sure that, again, they have a place to live that is appropriate. We have places that are appropriate, and we take care that when interactions occur, they occur very gently and mildly to the benefit of both species.
Bernheim Forest is how many acres now?
We are now 16,137 acres, which is 25.5 square miles of conservation land.
And for folks who maybe have never visited it, it's just 20 minutes south of the Gene Snyder in Louisville. Where do you think these bears are living when they come into this area? Because the hotbed of bear sightings has really been in around Bernheim South, Glendale, Kentucky, Elizabethtown, Nelson County. So where are these bears hiding?
Well, they're hiding along creek beds and the Salt River and the Ohio River. Right now, this bear is probably living off of acorns right now. Acorns are a huge source of protein for black bear, and he's trying to fatten up. I'm assuming it's a male. He's trying to fatten up for hibernation.
They confirmed this was a male. Okay, go ahead.
And so he likes these oak forests that are running along ridge tops. Oaks tend to grow up higher on ridges, and so he's up there trying to eat acorns by the poundful. And then occasionally, this time of year, he might take a little scavenging from a dead deer out there. But that's the way they get along, secretively on their own.
Do they have a GPS honing device in their minds? I mean, is there a likelihood that Bernie the bear in 2016, if he went back to Eastern Kentucky, would he come back here?
That's a good study. There's a lot of research that shows that bears and many other creatures do know where they're at in the world at any point in time. They do know what routes they have walked and run. Animals have pathways through the forest. They typically don't just wander nilly-willy. They really follow routes. And some of that is ease of travel along rivers or along ridge tops. But that also means that they're easy to follow back as well. So yes, often one can see. And in fact, you can do this if you catch squirrels in your yard because you don't like squirrels and you let them go, 6 blocks away. It's likely that same gray squirrel is going to be back in your yard a week later. A lot of creatures can do this.
Fascinating. I never thought about the squirrel. Now, like I've told you in the past, we live in an old house, so we've caught bats. I should say my wife has caught bats. She's amazing over the years. And they've always told us, make sure that if you're going to let them go, don't let them out right by your house. I mean, if you call animal ridders or whatever, they'll take them far away because they'll come right back. Right.
And not only that, the reason you don't do that is because they know exactly where and how they entered your house in the first place. And so they have affiliations with space.
Some things I think listeners would find fascinating about your study of the Bernie the bear in 2016. When you got the photos in, the close-up photos, you looked and you pointed some things out to me specifically when you looked close at that photo, and that was specifically how the bear looked in its coat and all that. Explain what you found out, which was telling you about its living conditions and how it was doing on your land.
Well, from the photos we could see, Bernie was a very healthy bear. He had this wonderful, long, rich, glossy coat, and that's generally a good sign, because a bear that's struggling to survive means it's out there grubbing around, it's having trouble, interacting with the land. But when they have a glorious, rich, thick coat and glossy, it means it's eating well and without much struggle. And the other was that he was really robust. He carried a lot of weight up in his shoulders and his neck, and that's areas where where bears store fat. And so that meant he was eating well as well.
And how long do you think he ended up staying there? Any estimate?
Well, we had unconfirmed sites around, well, I shouldn't say that, sightings that we could not confirm through photos or second visuals for several months. So we think he was probably in the area on and off of Bernheim for at least 4 or 5 months.
Let's take the conversation to the possibility. Okay, we've got them at Bernheim. We've got them swimming across the Ohio River to southern Indiana. How close do you think they've been into Louisville and Jefferson County? We haven't never had anybody tell us they've seen one in Jefferson, but do you think because they're secretive?
Well, we know historically, and I mean before all this settlement, they used to run these woods on a regular basis. Bears were in Kentucky, all over Kentucky. Now, since all that settlement, I would say, there may have been an odd bear that has wandered into Jefferson County. They don't know what a state line or a county line is, so that doesn't mean anything to them. It's where the habitat is, where the creeks are running, where the wood lines run, where they happen to find patches of berries and big acorns. That's where you're going to find a black bear. So I would like to think they've been in our neighborhoods. And in fact, there's been a few odd sightings of creatures, from black bear to what people thought was a lynx or mountain lion. So there's things happen that we can't always confirm.
On the lynx and the mountain lion, what did it do? Do we know what that ever became?
The mountain lion sighting was again unconfirmed.
The one in Anchorage.
Yeah, there was a wonderful photograph, but again, looking at it, I thought it looked like a big feral house cat.
You're right. You debunked that one right away. I remember that one. It was in Anchorage in eastern Jefferson County, and we were able to turn it to you, and you go, Doug, that's just a big old house cat. And in fact, I think they backed away from that real quickly.
Yeah, that story kind of went away pretty quickly. And I think if it had more sightings of a big old, mountain lion, it would have made a lot of news.
The bear gets a lot of attention, but what can you tell folks is really common around here that your cameras have captured that is also in the metro Louisville, southern Indiana area? What do we have?
Well, people don't know that there are bobcat running around through these smaller towns and cities and creeks, and they're eating field mice and rabbits and occasional bird. People don't often realize that there are still red fox and gray fox in the area, and of course coyote. Sometimes we hear them yelping and whistling at night when they've packed up and had a kill of a rabbit or a raccoon or something. But coyotes are amazingly common, and that's another reason why you shouldn't have your small dog or your house cat outside, particularly in the mornings, evenings, and night, because a coyote will take a house cat.
And their sightings have been pretty common around Jefferson County. I mean, we've heard them at night, some fall nights when the windows are open. That's a chilling sound to hear them in a pack howling.
Oh, I absolutely love it. It's one of those. It's one of those sounds. It's a little bit ghoulish, but on the other hand, it's pure joy, and it's a combination of whistles, barking, and yelps. And so it's really hard to describe. And until you hear that happen, you really And the first time you say, what the heck is that? After that, you just kind of celebrate with them.
And as we go into winter, will the makeup of the type of animals that come into this area change? Of course, you've just had the golden eagle return to Bernheim. He's been doing this trip since, 2015?
Yes. In fact, we think he's probably been at Bernheim for many years. This golden eagle, again, named by the public, Harper. Harper made his trip from Bernheim all the way up through Chicago, up through Minneapolis, up through Canada to the Hudson Bay up there. And that's where the polar bears hang out in the wintertime. And in the summer, it's their breeding grounds because there's lots of snow geese and Canada geese to eat and other fishing grounds. And so they breed up there. And then for about 6 or 8 weeks, they make their way back pretty much the same route. Now Harper is confirmed for us, and he made his way back to Kentucky just the other day. And so he'll spend 6, 8, maybe 12 weeks with us and then repeat the whole journey. One of the cool things, Doug, is in us tagging that bird, we found out that Harper stops for the evening almost all the time in a large forest block that happens to be protected. State parks, national forests, state forests, waterways. He's hitting protected lands all the way up and back from the Hudson Bay of Canada. And that just shows how important it is that we save this wildlife and these wild places.
You all were able to track his approach back into Louisville just a few weeks ago, and he circled and circled and circled. I guess, was he checking out the familiar area to say, hey, this is my spot?
Yeah. In fact, as he got closer, he flew up to 1,000 feet, circled up there for a while, and then he put a beeline and flew at 35 miles an hour straight down into Bernheim. And so these animals know where they're at, and they know what they're looking for.
Fascinating animal tales. Mark, how can people reach you if they want to contact you at Bernheim Forest?
Well, we've got a website, which is bernheim.org, or again, our phone number is 955-8512, area code 502. So give us a call with your questions. Give us a call with your observations.
And your email address, what is it?
And my email is mkwourms@bernheim.org.
WOURMS.
Correct.
Bernheim.org.
Yeah.
Bears among us, folks. You can't get any better than that. And don't forget, I value your feedback. You've been sending me emails since we started the podcast. My email address is one word, dproffitt. That's DPROFFITT at WHAS11.com. I hope you've enjoyed this wildlife edition of the Proffitt Report. And this has been a production of WHAS 11 Media.